It's a part of you. At the time, you don't think so, but then years later, there's a lot of things that go on during high school, and you can't ever get that back.
It gave form to our life with a prod, a set of rules, opportunities, and challenges. We entered like clay looking for an artist's hand. Somewhere in the middle, we began to take shape, and then it was over. Adults had been created ready to take their place in the world. Some became public leaders, some soldiers, some tanners, some became teachers or actors or athletes. But no matter what we became, or where we went, or how we got there, we all took form at Woburn High.
The state actually threatened to prosecute the town and fine the town, and they finally relented in 1852 and voted to establish a high school.
In 1852, after much debate, the town of Woburn voted to create a public high school. Up until then, youngsters who were old enough and well enough off attended Warren Academy, a private tuition-based school near Woburn Center. But the railroad, tanneries, and a wave of immigrants from Europe during the 1840s had changed things in Woburn.
The population mushroomed in the 50s primarily because of the immigrants. The population went up something like 30%. In the 1850s, and it sort of coincided nationally with a real rebirth of industry. In Woburn's case, the tanneries exploded. There were tanneries everywhere. The railroad had come to Woburn Center.
Public education was taking hold around the state, around the country, and now it was going to take hold in Woburn. On September 6, 1852, 34 students began classes on the second floor of the Knight Building on Main Street, where the town had leased space for $100 a year. William Stone was the principal and also a teacher. The curriculum was meant to prepare students for colleges and normal schools. 3 years later, on December 8, 1855, Woburn High School graduated its first class, 10 girls and 1 boy.
They quickly realized that the Knight building was not going to be large enough, and so they decided to build a high school of their own. Town meeting voted in 1854 to build a high school. They built it the following year, and it opened up on Main Street. Today's population would just see a little parking lot there, a municipal parking lot opposite Hovey Street.
By the end of the Civil War, in 1865, there were 21 tanning and currying shops in Woburn. The population had grown to over 6,000. The high school had 87 students and had moved into its own building on Main Street. The principal was Thomas Emerson, a strict disciplinarian who favored corporal punishment. Education was morally based. Attendance was mandatory and, along with reading, writing, and arithmetic, students were forced to read the Bible. A good student wouldn't dare get in trouble.
We certainly weren't angels.
So tell me about me.
Sometimes what we used to do is if you're walking by a locker and you saw a loose lock, you'd take it off and walk down, and then you'd go up to somebody else's locker and just close it on it. And that could be especially fun in the gym. When somebody was in the shower, you just throw all their clothes in the locker and slam the light shut.
We hung out down at the gym quite a bit. If we were trying to dock a class or get a note from a teacher, I got to be honest with you, I spent quite a bit of time in the trainer's room drinking Pepsis, shooting hoops, and you know, once in a while I'd get caught down there and Coach Romano would bail me out with a note to help me out if I was trying to skip a class. That's the truth.
Joe Conley was my English teacher. He lives on the house, second house in from Eastern Avenue. And I had him for a homeroom teacher up above. And what we used to do with Joe, it wasn't nice. He'd go out and do his hall duty, and we'd take his chair, and we'd tie a rope from the chair, And what we do is there was a cleat on the side that held the curtains, so we would take the rope from the curtains and we'd hang his swivel chair out the window. The funny part is his wife lived across the street, and Kay still lives there. She'd call the school and say, "Can I talk to Joe? Joe, they're doing it to you again."
There was a big jar of a big pail or something at the top of the stairs, and she just gave it a little kick, because it went down 2 flights of stairs, and Mr. Lowe didn't think that was very good, so she was expelled from school.
Smoking was a big no-no, and I smoked. And I was caught more than once and reprimanded.
I think I skipped school once. And we went to a burlesque show in Boston. We took the train and went to the burlesque show. And ironically, I saw one of the teachers from here at the show. I'm not going to name any names.
In 1871, James Hansen became the 3rd principal of Woburn High School and the first to deal with overcrowding in the classroom. The school now had 106 students. In 1873, a brick addition was built to accommodate a growing student population. The town of Woburn was growing. Telephones and electric lights had come to town. In 1888, Woburn became a city. By 1893, the city population reached 14,000, and its public school system had over 2,500 students.
Republican mayor came in 1900 and said, "We can't afford a new high school." A Democratic mayor would come in 1902 and say, "We're going to build a new high school," and it went back and forth like that. It took 8 or 9 years of good political hardball before a new high school was built.
The debate lasted until the city voted to buy a 34-acre farm on Montvale Avenue and began construction of a new high school. It was completed in 1907 and started its first year with 300 students. Along with the new building came a new curriculum aimed at preparing students for vocations in trade, commerce, and manufacturing. The old high school building on Main Street became an elementary school and was later named the Hansen School in honor of James Hansen, the former high school principal. The new high school on Montvale Avenue cost the city $152,000, but 90 years later, it was still educating the youth of Woburn.
I'll never forget running onto the football field in my senior year when we played Winchester here, and we hadn't won in a long time, and we ended up winning that game, and that was I'll never forget that. I'll absolutely never forget that experience.
In 1891, Woburn High School played its first football game against Winchester High. Winchester won 12-0, but it was the beginning of a 100-year tradition and continuation of a 150-year rivalry. Except for the 6 years between 1912 and 1917, Woburn and Winchester have done battle on the football field every year since 1902.
I always put an ad in the paper every Thanksgiving Day that the rivalry continues and the friendships last forever.
A few people would get out of hand and the night before the game come up and paint something all over the building or the field or something, nothing drastic.
Day before, you made sure you had your corsage. If you weren't going with anyone, even the girls going as groups, we'd go to the local florist and get a great big mum, big yellow mum, and they would put a great big black and orange W in the middle of it, and then with the pretty ribbon, and you'd wear that to the game.
We were winning 18-13, and we had the ball, and we didn't want to give it up. And we get in the huddle, and you never saw 11 tough guys cry. And we said, nobody's going to get the ball but us. We made 4th down and 8, 4th down and 6, and 4th down and 4 3 times. And I'll never forget Anthony Rose. He threw his helmet up in the air. The game wasn't over, and we thought it was over. and we had to get back in the huddle, and we made the play, and the time ran out. And that was one of the most exciting episodes here at the high school.
Two years after the new high school on Montvale Avenue opened, George Lowe succeeded Herbert Owen as principal. Lowe made headlines after throwing B. Earl Sherburne out of school for refusing to wear a military uniform according to the rules of the military drill. But nothing could compare to what happened in 1914 when Herbert Lowe defended his school's baseball team.
Woburn won, 2-1. Stoneham complained that the pitcher's mound was too far. They complained in the first inning. The umpire measured it. It was 3 inches off or something like that. They adjusted the rubber. They finished the game as, again, it was 2-1, close game. Next day, Stoneham sent their town engineer over to measure, and he claimed it was 6 feet off. It was long by 6 feet. The Stoneham pitcher was a noted curveball pitcher, and he complained his curves were breaking early, and it made sense to Stoneham that the mound was too long. It was too far. And they protested, and one thing led to another, and it became quite a scandal of the day. Woburn got thrown out of the Middlesex League and stripped of its Middlesex Cup.
Principal Lowe stood by his team and refused to return the trophy. At the end of the school year in 1915, George Lowe resigned. The trophy from the 1914 game between Woburn and Stoneham has never been found. It was 1910 when Oral Bean began teaching in Woburn schools. 5 years later, he was appointed by the school committee to be the principal of the high school. He would remain in that position for 36 years, longer than any other individual in the history of Woburn High School. Mr. Bean would guide the students of Woburn High through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the time in 1917 when someone passed out fake tickets to the senior dance.
He was quite strict and rigid, I thought.
We used to call him a snooper. He was always checking around, looking around. You never knew where you're going to find him.
In 1917, the United States entered World War I. Thousands of America's young men were going overseas and into battle. The city of Woburn sent its share and then some. More than 1,300 men from Woburn served during World War I. 34 of them died for their efforts. One of them was a young Woburn High School student named John Flaherty. Killed July 18, 1918, in France, John was only 17 years old. On September 16, 1934, Woburn High School Auditorium was named in honor of John T. Flaherty.
By the 1920s, the early 20s, the superintendent of schools, George Clapp, was calling for an addition. Child labor laws were changing. By 1926, they were having double sessions here at the high school. They were educating students from Burlington at Woburn High School because Burlington had no high school, and they finally had to do it. And they did. They voted to spend the money and borrow the money about 6 months before the Depression started. And so that was it. The wings were added on. What we would look at as the wings today were added on, built in 1930.
In 1930, the newly enlarged high school on Montvale Avenue became both a junior and senior high school, each with their own principal and set of classrooms. It remained that way for the next 30 years.
Times were tough. I remember that most kids, when they knew they were going to graduate, they knew they were going to go to work either in a leather shop or a greenhouse or in a factory. Very few of us looked to college. That was out of the question in those days.
The Great Depression touched Woburn as it did many American cities. Tanneries and shoe factories, the backbone of Woburn's economy, shut down. Merrimack Chemical Company, one of the city's largest employers, also closed its doors. Families were in economic trouble too. Many called upon their oldest to help out. In some years of the Depression, more than half the boys in Woburn High would drop out and enter the workforce to supplement their family's income.
There were 383 families in Woburn on welfare, and most of the young people in this building, we all used to have a black bag, and we would go down to the fire station on Wynn Street Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays you would get them lard, butter, and milk, and Fridays you would go down and you'd get eggs, butter, and milk, and we all had that black bag, and nobody seemed to be embarrassed. It was just a thing. We all lived the same way.
Woburn Mayor William E. Kane, a controversial figure who served 11 years as mayor, slashed city budgets. But in 1939, when he attempted to exert his influence on the school budget, he found himself at odds with the school committee. The standoff shut down city schools for 2 days and resulted in a court ruling that affirmed the school committee's independence. But Kane didn't always lose, and under his leadership, a free milk distribution program was created for needy students. He also helped put in place a federally subsidized school lunch program for city schools.
I was right out here at the football field, okay, watching on the outside. I didn't know if I had the money or not, but I was watching through the fence. And over came the radio. It came over the radio that Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor.
On December 7, 1941, news that Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor reached the people of Woburn and the nation. For the second time in Oral Bean's career, students graduated into a world at war. Some didn't wait for graduation and dropped out of Woburn High as soon as they were old enough to enter the armed forces. Like generations before, beginning with the Civil War, Woburn High School was discharging its young men off to faraway battlefields.
We knew that we were going to end up, when we graduated, that we would end up in the services.
And when we got out of basic, we got a week's leave. And when we left after a week, we come up here and harassed the teachers and all during that week's leave and so forth. And then when we went back, we were shipped in all different directions.
I was on my way to Okinawa aboard ship, and I got a letter telling me that Franny had been hit bad. And there was another kid with him, Frank Callahan, who played on the baseball team with me. He also got hit bad. Both of them were on Iwo Jima.
Over 3,000 men and women from Woburn entered the armed forces to fight during World War II. Captain Timothy Sargent, a 1920 graduate of Woburn High, was one of the first killed, shot down in the Philippines the day after Pearl Harbor was bombed. As the weeks and months turned into years, Woburn would bury former scholars, athletes, and class presidents, and when it was over, in 1945, 85 from Woburn had perished in the fight, more than any war before or any war since.
Word would come home that Lucky Ryan gets killed, and this kid got killed, and this kid got killed. Kids you knew, guys that had gone in the service. So it was somber. It was really a somber time.
The final chapter of Woburn High School and World War II took 45 years to be completed. On May 29, 1998, Woburn High School became the first high school in the country to award diplomas to soldiers who gave up their high school years to serve their country in World War II.
We had to try to find out how many guys did not graduate and prove that they, didn't graduate and get a diploma. So we had made calls and did all we could. And I remember one guy, he was a big guy, and he got me on the phone. He says, "I'm not going to that." He says, "That's stupid." He says, I'll forget about it." I says, "Okay." Well, that day he showed up, and I was so pleased, and you were, and he sat down and went through the whole thing with the Medal of Honor winners talking and everything. And afterwards he got to me and he said, "Bill, Thank God I came. This was the nicest thing I've ever had done for me.
With the end of World War II, high school again became high school. Students were no longer going off to war. Communists might have been lurking around the corner, and the atom bomb could explode at any time, but the future looked embraceable.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Frank used to take his girl down there, Kathy, down there. And my friend Anthony Lamone, he used to take his girl down there. Nicky Girardi, he did the same thing with Betty, so I guess we all hung out we all went in the same direction.
Yeah, everybody would go down the pond. Not me, of course, but you know. Yeah, that was the big place, and the Mystic Lakes.
My senior prom, I went with David Levine. He was my boyfriend. He was the captain of the football team. It was very cool.
So we used to go to Ted's Inn, as I recall, after the prom. Of course, we weren't allowed to drink. It was, some people did.
In 1951, after serving more than 40 years in the school system, with 36 of those years as principal, Oral Bean retired. He was succeeded by Henry Blake, Woburn High School class of 1928. Blake would guide the school through 3 decades of rapidly changing society. But he would never lose his quaint, good-natured outlook, which he shared with students every day during morning announcements.
Good morning, students. Please remember that one swallow doesn't make a summer. And if you can't play a sport, be one anyway, won't you? And of course, everybody would giggle because he had said it last week or last month, the same exact. If you can't play a sport, be one anyway, won't you?
The year Henry Blake became principal, Sylvania Electric moved to town. Route 128 opened for traffic, and returning war heroes were having babies. The boom was on, and Woburn's population was approaching 32,000. There was more to the high school curriculum than just an academic focus on business and various trades. Extracurricular activities aimed at appealing to students with diverse interests became a part of the high school experience.
Yeah, well, I had an idea back in the 50s. I decided that we didn't have anything for kids. They had a drama show and stuff, but nothing for kids with a little talent.
And he said, let's put a show on. There was some kid that was going to go to New York for a scholarship and didn't have the funds to transport himself to New York. So I said, Bill, we don't know anything about putting a show on. He said, look, you can play the piano.
So Lolly came with me, and we got a chorus. And the secret of it, as you know, it's secret of any success. You put 100 kids in the chorus, they all have 2 parents, they all have, so you fill this auditorium, you just have a big chorus, and you get a sold-out crowd 2 nights in a row.
A student didn't have to sink a basket, hit a home run, or cross the end zone to be a star at Woburn High School. All they had to do was learn their lines. From 1955 to 1969, springtime meant the Black and Orange Review. The popular variety show sold out every year.
And that we called them the Trio. And they were as good as the McGuire sisters. They really were. They were absolutely fantastic. And I always felt that they brought the crowd to the show. We sold out every year. And when they became seniors and were going to graduate, I sat down with Mr. Blake and I said, you know, I really think we ought to call it. We've got really not much coming along. Oh, and we also had Georgie Pesatoro. Georgie went on to become the star of a chorus line in the Schubert Theater in New York. And these kids were top-notch talent and deserving of a full house. He said to me, don't worry about it. You got a program going. It's going to feed itself. He said, just stay with it, and it's going to grow.
He just allowed anybody that wanted to be part of it, whether you had talent or not, you know, he would find a way of getting you in.
Do you guys have any talent?
Did I? Absolutely not.
The rules of the show were, Bob, every kid could be in the show. If you couldn't sing, if you couldn't dance, you were in the chorus. And the chorus sometimes numbered 200 people.
What was the best you ever saw? Basketball, football,
Oh,
baseball.
Eddie,
If you
the
had
best,
to pick
the best
one,
athlete
pick
that
the
ever.
best you ever saw.
Eddie Foley. But I'll say that like that. But Eddie Foley was the best athlete that ever came through this school.
In every town, there is at least one athlete who remains larger than life long after his playing career ends. So it is with Ed Foley, a magical athlete whose accomplishments in the early 1960s in football, baseball, and basketball have carved a special place in memories of Tanner fans.
Tanjo was very young. He's a very gifted athlete, and he was so talented. He just did things naturally. I mean, all the little things that good athletes do, you know, by instinct. He had it. He had it all.
Tanjo Foley was 2 years older than I was. Someone who, as a sophomore, you look up to as a senior. He was an all-scholastic in football, quarterback, just an outstanding presence on the football field. Basketball, all-scholastic.
And probably his best sport was baseball. He was a fantastic baseball player.
The teams that he was on always won.
It was perhaps what he did on the gridiron that established him as a sporting legend in Woburn High School history. On Thanksgiving Day 1961, Tanjo Foley passed for 161 yards, ran for 108, and threw 2 touchdown passes, leading the Tanners to a 42-18 win over Winchester. Some say it was the greatest performance ever by a Woburn athlete. Under Tanjo's leadership, the Tanners ended the football season undefeated. The city of Woburn was so proud, they gave the team a holiday trip to Miami, Florida, and the Orange Bowl. In 1959, Woburn faced another crisis in its ability to accommodate all the students enrolled in school. 2,100 students squeezed into the combined junior-senior high school, forcing the school into double sessions. In 1961, the City Council agreed to build a new junior high school as well as an addition to the high school. At the beginning of the school year in 1964, the new $3.3 million addition at the high school opened.
And as a senior, it was very exciting to have new classrooms, new equipment, new lockers, a new gymnasium.
For the first time in over 30 years, the Montvale Avenue building was only a high school, housing 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. Grades 7 through 9 now went to the new junior high school on Middle Street, named for President John F. Kennedy.
I was standing outside my office, which was where Paul Sweeney's office was. And Mary Cardillonis came in and she said, "The president's been shot." And I thought she meant the president of RCA or something. I never thought of the president of the United States. But when it dawned on me, I went into Henry's office and I said, "Gee, the president's been shot." He said, "Well, we'll get the news on at 2 o'clock. I said, "But don't you think if the president's shot, we don't have to wait till 2? They'll have the news on." And he was the same way.
I can remember everything about it. It was a day just like this, a sunny, nice day. And it wasn't clear that the president was dead yet. Maybe somebody knew, but of course they hadn't said anything about it yet. So we were kind of huddled around the radio listening.
But the kids were having a dance that Friday night. It was a Friday. And they had it was going to be in here. They had the whole auditorium decorated. And nobody said a word to them. I just watched them come in, and they just tore down the decorations. Never made arrangements to cancel the dance. They just tore them down. That was it.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed.
The assassination of President Kennedy in November of 1963 was just one of many shocks to American society in the 1960s. There were racial riots, student movements for free speech, and other assassinations. There were the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and Andy Warhol. And there was a war in Vietnam.
We knew that when we graduated from high school, we were going to be facing Vietnam. And so there was a very strong sense among more than just a small group. I mean, it was really a much broader feeling in the high school that, hey, you know, you know, this place has to change, and we're going to be the change agents.
On October 15, 1969, more than 200 students from Woburn High skipped school to protest United States involvement in Vietnam. The protest would continue in Woburn and around the country, but 6 more years would pass before the war in Vietnam was over. The last American to die in that conflict was Charles McMahon, Jr., Woburn High, class of 1972. He was killed on April 29, 1975, as the last Americans lifted off from the Saigon airport.
The 60s up into the late 70s were a period of great change in this building because, first of all, numbers grew tremendously in a short period of time. The staff grew bigger. We had a lot of people who were sort of transients, and the school became very different.
On January 26, 1970, in the cold of a New England winter, more than 300 teachers in Woburn picketed City Hall. The Woburn School Committee and the Woburn Teachers Association were as far apart as the Red Sox and the Yankees when it came to agreeing on a new contract. Teachers wanted better working conditions and higher paychecks. On April 1, 1970, Henry Blake faced perhaps one of the greatest challenges of his tenure. His teachers were on strike.
So we said, what we'll do is we'll come into school and we'll quickly assess how many teachers we have, and if we don't have enough teachers to provide for the safety and welfare of the youngsters, then we're going to dismiss. So that's what we did. Every day, the teachers would start the picket line out there, and we would notify them that we don't have enough teachers to go. And he carried it off so peacefully.
Well, for me, it was a very difficult time because I was a housemaster at that time, and we didn't know whether we were considered to be teachers or administrators. And in fact, the teachers' union people told us to come to work. So we came to work during that period of time, but it was not very comfortable.
3 teachers from the high school were jailed for 3 days for violating a court order not to strike. On Friday, April 3rd, teachers and the school committee reached an agreement. Teachers and students returned to school.
I didn't have her as a teacher. I just admired her from afar. She was one of the prettiest ladies, I think, that I ever saw as a teacher up here.
So you had a crush on her?
Oh, yeah. I think most of the boys at that time had a crush on her.
The teacher that most affected me was Mr. Ricker, Shipley Ricker. He was a chemistry teacher. And besides chemistry, he would teach us math. And he would put lists on the board, draw a line, and say, I give you 4 seconds to add them up. And he showed us how to do it.
Dogger Brennan. When I was here, it was getting on in his years, but he still put the fear of God into everyone. He paroled the halls and made sure that people stayed out of trouble, but he was a fair guy. He was always willing to listen to your side of the story, and he had the persona of being this ugly, hard-nosed guy, but in reality, he was a softie.
There was then, probably still is now, a little division between the kids who were in the more academic courses and the kids who were in the more general courses. And Jim Brennan was always trying to bridge that gap.
My science teacher, Mr. Fiddler, he think he's single because he always talks about wanting a girlfriend and stuff like that.
One of my favorite teachers at Woburn High was Mr. Garagogian. He was a science teacher, and we all called him Danger Garagogian, because he'd always set up an experiment, and no one exactly knew whether the experiment was going to work or not. And it didn't always go the way that he planned, and he was always very entertaining.
The teachers like the Burke girls, you wouldn't forget them, Margaret and Catherine. There were two reasons why they were my favorites. One, they came from the South End, so you had to toe the line. We had them for, for French and English in the college preparatory course.
When I played on the field hockey team, Mr. Quayle, one day we were at practice and he came up over the hill to tell us something, and I screamed out, "Quayle Dogga." So that was his nickname. I'm not quite sure if he really liked it, but we called him Quayle Dogga.
I am a disciple of Doc Sweeney, only because he taught me not only the game of baseball, but the game of life.
I remember Miss O'Brien, a Spanish teacher. I know she was very good in languages, but for whatever reason, her class was very good. Really learned something in there. I mean, she used to make little games out of how she would present material. So to a group of junior and senior boys who minds were elsewhere, that was pretty good. The fact that she was very good looking helped also, I think.
We have a lot of new teachers this year, so it seems like there's a lot going on between the young teachers. Miss Open being my favorite. I must admit I have a little crush on her. I'm on a first name basis with her now. She's on a first name basis with me.
For me, especially, Dot Welling was the most influential. I mean, she actually really changed the whole course of my life with her the after-school theater program.
The interesting thing about Dottie was that, and the whole drama group, was that it was an amalgam of people, different kinds of people. I mean, it wasn't smart kids only, it wasn't nerds only, it wasn't jocks only. It was really kind of a confluence of nerds and jocks and, math whizzes, and all of whom found their own things to do.
She was in sync with our energy as teenagers and believed that we were the salt of the earth, and she conveyed that feeling to us and was tremendously enthusiastic about anything we did.
Eric Bogosian did everything you ever asked him to do, but he always had one hang-up. He always had to have fake blood, no matter what we did. He insisted he had to have fake blood.
And I remember I took a stool and I smashed it to pieces on stage. I'm supposed to be mad. And a piece of the stool flew out into the audience, and it being Woburn High, a few seconds later, the stool piece came flying back at me.
He lunged across the desk and he had me by the throat. And my mother, who was at the production, just leapt up and screamed, "Stop killing my son! Let go of my son!" At which point Eric knew that he really had made an impact with that performance.
These kids will do anything for you if you ask them and you help them and you know that you like them. But I had trouble sometimes with some teachers, to be frank. They had troubles with me, too.
But your grilled cheese that was only cooked on one side, that's always one that stands out. They cook it in the oven and they never flipped it, so it was always just wet butter. Pretty typical disgusting food.
My buddies' mothers all worked in the cafeteria, so we made sure we had a good meal every day.
I've never bought before. Never, ever have bought lunch here.
Why?
I don't trust it.
One of the famous meals once or twice a week would be some sort of meat and mashed potatoes and vegetables with a lot of gravy, and the kids used to call it gravy train.
I remember coming to school one day and seeing the kids all across the street in Montfield Avenue. They weren't going to come in. And this was a shock to me. And I remember Henry Blake saying, checking the absentee list, and every kid that was out there was going to be suspended from school.
To Principal Henry Blake, the world must have changed more than he could ever have imagined it would. When he started, boys had brush cuts and girls wore dresses. Now, boys had ponytails and girls wore jeans.
You know, he was an older man, and he would stand outside his office every time the bell rang. He'd want to meet people, say hi to them, tell them to tuck in their shirts.
The feelings that we had about Mr. Blake, I think, were that he was kind of charming, idiosyncratic fixture from another age that happened to be standing in the corridors of our school. Hello, how are you? You know, I mean, you know, dressed just like you would expect a principal to be dressed, looking just like you would expect a principal to be looking, and surrounded by what amounts to a cultural revolution.
Mr. Blake called the class of 1972 one of the worst to graduate in Woburn High School history. That year, because of the size of the class, diplomas were wheeled out on carts and passed down to graduates in their seats. The move was far from popular. The next year, in spite of the increasing size of the graduating class, students filed across the stage to receive their diplomas. But amid the protest, discontent, and change of the 1970s, something else was happening at Woburn High School.
Tanner Pride, you know, that started with Peter, and I think it was one of the best things that ever happened by coaches here. And it really elevated everything and everybody in this town. It gave them a pride about who they were in this town, you know, because it's a great town.
And I think Tanner Pride was something that brought the whole community together, not only the school community, which it did, but the entire Woburn community.
And I'm thinking of a theme, and pride, of course, is something I've lived by all my life. And I looked at the Tanner and kept writing Tanner and Tanners, and then I put the word Tanner Pride down.
In 1973, Woburn High School hired Peter Sullivan away from Wayland to coach the football team. 2 years later, Sullivan coached the Woburn Tanners through 11 consecutive wins, a perfect season. For the first time in Tanner history, Woburn went to the Super Bowl.
We had a great running back named Steve McHugh, who runs a business here in Woburn now. Mark Ray was a great offensive lineman. John Borgeson was a 6'3", 240-pound guard and tackle. Sometimes the game was over at the coin toss, Bob, because he was so put together. His sleeves are up here. You could see the opponent say, "Oh my God!" The game was over at the coin toss. You know, not really, but pretty strong football team. Some people say the biggest and most powerful team in the history of the school.
Before a crowd of over 20,000 people, Woburn beat North Quincy 20-7.
We made sure that it wasn't just our football team, that it was the community's football team. And let's talk about Thanksgiving Day 1979. We knew that Thanksgiving Day game was going to go to the bowl and face Brockton. That was already been decided. The points were all decided. We fall behind 15-0.
And I remember going over the sideline just thinking, what are we going to do tonight? We always win. We always have we always go out and have a good time. What are we going to do?
I knew we weren't going to quit. I wasn't sure about winning, but I knew we weren't going to quit. And a young man named John O'Brien, he made a circus catch. People were all over him. He makes the catch. He goes in the end zone. Now it's 15-7. We go into halftime. We kind of regroup. Everybody's poised in confidence, which was our motto for the year. And we come out. We make it 15-15. Okay, now I go for the 2 points, tie the game. And maybe with about 2 to 3 minutes left in the game, we punch in the winner. John O'Brien again makes a circus catch in the end zone. 21-15, we win, we go to the bowl.
On December 1st, 1979, 20,000 football fans packed Boston College's Alumni Stadium to watch history unfold. The Woburn Tanners were in their second Super Bowl in 5 years, and the score was tight. With 24 seconds remaining, Frank Cirillo made the run of his life.
It was just the right call, a draw at the right time, and everybody was looking for pass, and little Frankie Cirillo goes up to the middle. We had ourselves a touchdown.
Usually a big hole, but it wasn't. I kind of sidestepped someone, I think, at the beginning, and then I just kind of weaved, it seemed like.
Walter White was funny. He used to say he came out of Arlington, and he used to say he was really a Woburnite because he was conceived down at Hon Pond.
He never interfered. I always would go to him, Coach, what do you think about this? I never excluded him either. And he loved that. And he was an easy guy to work for. Great sense of humor.
Walter loved a good time. We used to go to Walter's house and we'd sit down at the piano. There'd be Ned Murray, Walter White, Bat McDonough, and it'd be nothing to stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning singing songs.
If she said, you know, today we're going to the moon, we said, what time? It was, you know, an incredible motivator and just knew how to win. And definitely, we didn't expect anything but to win with her.
She'd throw a basketball up with 2 hands. You know, she was awful, skill-wise, but she could get to you. And that was a big lesson to me as an athlete and as a coach, that it's not knowing the game, and as a teacher, as much as knowing the kid and knowing your athlete and knowing how to go about getting to them, to their core.
The focus was on female athletes, and in a way we may have had more opportunities than possibly even today, in the fact that there was so much sensitivity about equity and fairness and so forth, and it then paved the way, obviously, to much greater things today, but it was a wonderful time.
We were thrilled just to be playing sports, so we didn't have anything to compare it to. Now, at my age, I look back and see what the girls have now and see what we had then, and it means more to me now.
Freeman and Martin were more than athletes. They were scholars, all scholastic, and they set the bar, leading the way for others equally as talented and as bright, like Diane Connolly, who sprinted to greatness in the 80s, and Liz Nadeau, who in the 90s led the Tanners to victory in softball. And then came another Skeffington, Melissa, who went on to become the all-time leading basketball scorer for boys and girls.
He could do wonders with the puck. He could skate, he could shoot, he could pass, he could stick handle. We had a game in Belmont one time, and we were losing 4-1 going into the 3rd period, and I believe he scored 4 or 5 goals in the 3rd period, and we won the game. And
John Carter graduated from Woburn High School with the class of 1982. He went on to RPI on a full scholarship where he played hockey for 4 years before getting a long-distance phone call that would change his life.
I was in the middle of an exam, and my college coach knocked on the door and took me out and said, the Bruins just called, they want you to play tonight against Montreal. And this was just after our senior season had ended, and I hadn't skated in 2 weeks, and they wanted to play against Montreal in the Garden that night. My parents were watching the 6 o'clock news and saw that a local kid signed, and they saw my picture in the news, and that's how they found out. I had no time to do anything.
Over the line, off of the left for Brickley, to Carter, in, shot, score! It is John Carter from Kansas.
Carter went on to skate in the Stanley Cup Finals in 1990 and won the 7th Player Award. His career with the Bruins lasted 6 years. His affection for Woburn is for a lifetime. In 1990, for the first time in Woburn High School history, a number was retired.
He guided the school through all of the complexities and the turmoil and all the changes and so forth that took place during the 60s and 70s. And those were hectic years because I was teaching in the classroom, you know, at that time and so forth. And I think he did a great job. I think he was ahead of his time a lot.
In 1980, Henry Blake retired as principal of Woburn High School, a position he had held for nearly 30 years. James J. Foley became the 11th principal of Woburn High School. Foley was no stranger to Montvale Avenue. He graduated from the high school in 1952 and began his teaching career in the history department in 1958. After 11 years in the classroom and a decade in administration, the front office was a comfortable fit. But 1 year into the job, things got tight. Massachusetts voters passed Proposition 2.5, and Foley was put into an economic straitjacket.
We lost somewhere in the vicinity of 40 teachers here at the high school. And those people would have been really the backbone of the departments now and so forth. And they never came back to school.
Foley would spend 13 years as principal, retiring in 1993. He was replaced by Robert Norton, a Watertown native who embraced not only the high school but the city of Woburn as if it were his own. Norton would become the principal, instrumental in initiating plans to build a new high school. He also became known for closing things down.
I think that happened my senior year when he decided to lock the bathrooms and only have a couple open. I'm pretty sure that happened my senior year because I remember we were not happy about it at first.
The worst part about the bathrooms is from first to fifth period, there's one bathroom open in one side of the building, and from 6th to 8th, there's another building is open. But in between, 5th period, I always have to go to the bathroom, and there's never a bathroom open.
Who did you admire the most in high school, whether it be student or athlete?
I would probably, it's a good question. Actually, I was looking forward to this one because John O'Brien is someone that I had talked about for many years and lost touch with him. He was class of '80, a couple of years older than myself, and always looked up to him. Just one of those kids that did a lot for the school, got involved with sports, did great things in sports, and you know, great in academics as well. So, someone I always strive to emulate.
He went to Harvard and then he held records at Harvard and was a scholar athlete and became a great citizen and a great parent and a great husband.
Everybody gets emotional.
Everybody gets emotional.
When they talk about John.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know, maybe because he's not with us anymore. You know, and it's too bad that, you know, we feel after people have left, you know, all these nice things are said. Of course, the nice things were said about him from the beginning.
Yeah, something about him that moved people.
Yeah.
What was it about him that moved people?
He was a nice person. And he had all kinds of things going for him, you know, with his of course, I thought at the time he was a cute guy, good looking. That was one. He was smart. He was athletic. He had everything going for him, but he didn't come across like that.
Wasn't he the best cousin you ever had? Wasn't he the best friend you ever had? Because he was, Bob. Wasn't he the best teammate you ever had? Wasn't he the best classmate you ever had? John O'Brien was a very, very unique person. I was lucky to have coached him. Very lucky.
I went through college, dental school, internship, started, lived in this town. I had a personal problem a few years ago that was difficult, was very painful. But it was very odd that no one in college, no one in dental school, no fellow professionals ever called me up and said, "How you doing? You'll be all right." But you know, let me tell you, and this is no lie, if I told you 40% of my high school classmates wrote me cards, came to my office, called me up, and had nothing but, "We're with you, Paul, you'll be all right."
I know it's an educational institution, but the friendships that we still have from the group of 1973 are just amazing. And when I talk to people, when I travel, are people that are outside of our high school class and see that we're still friends some 30 years later and that we still do things with each other's families and we get together. It's amazing, and it's not just a couple of people.
The school is identified with the city, and the borders of the city were the borders of our life. We very rarely would cross over into other cities or towns. For one thing, we were bordered by towns that were very different than ours. Lexington and Winchester are upscale, affluent communities, and Woburn was its own universe in itself. We virtually have our own accent and our own way of speaking. And the high school was the common experience for everybody who grew up in Woburn. So the whole thing became interconnected as our place, our village, our town.
So it's not the building that makes the high school, it's the people. And when we build a new high school, in 100 years, it'll be 250 years old, and it'll still be the same character.
Little Black and Orange? What? Yeah, love Black and Orange. Oh, is the library black and what?
No, how do you sing it?
Oh, you want me to sing Black and Orange? Oh, I don't know if I can do that. I'm not a singer. Are you kidding me? You want me to sing Black and Orange?
Oh, I have the worst voice in the world. But I'll try it.
Okay.
Black and orange, black and orange.
Give a hearty yell. Keep the football under cover.
Keep it out of sight.
Rah, rah, rah.
Rah, rah, rah.
Black and orange, black and orange. Give a hearty yell. Fight, fight with all your might.
Fight, fight with all your might.
Fight, fight, fight with all your might.
For Woburn High.
I can't. I don't think I can do that on camera. Are you serious?
Black and orange, black and orange. Give a hearty cheer. Keep the hockey puck under cover. Keep it out of sight. Rah, rah, rah.
Rah, rah, rah.
Rah, rah, rah. Black and orange. Give a hearty yell.
Give a hearty yell.
Fight, fight with all your might.
For Woburn High. Fight, fight with all your might for Woburn High. Now, I bet I'm the only one that sang that.
Okay, I want to do it.
There you go.
Ready?
As soon as John's ready.
This is my life for a lot of years here.
Go ahead.
Black and orange, give a hearty yell. Keep the football under cover, keep it out of sight, rah, rah, rah. Black and orange, give a hearty yell. Fight, fight with all your might for Woburn High. I got to tell you something, Bob. I never saw a halftime performance in all my career. I was in the locker room.